Sanctuary was never meant for humankind. It was forged as a refuge from the war between the high heavens and the burning hells.
On March 28, 2024, Diablo IV was added to the Xbox Game Pass catalog. It became the first game to join the catalog after Activision Blizzard's acquisition by Microsoft was legally completed. Naturally, I was interested to give it a try. Since I have never been really invested in the Diablo franchise, I had no idea what to expect. All I wanted to do was to try out the campaign once and then never think about the game again. And I'm guessing there are a few other people out there who are of the same mindset. You have never really played any Diablo games, but you are a Game Pass subscriber, so you are curious to check out this big ticket title. Well, this video is exactly for people like us who want to know if the game is worth playing just for the campaign. There will be spoilers along the way, but as you will see, it may not really matter. So let's get right to it. Is this game worth playing just for the campaign? As someone with absolutely no emotional connection to this franchise, I would say yes. The campaign, which took me around 17 to 18 hours on the lowest world tier, is absolutely worth a try just for the gameplay experience. The story was not that great, but maybe I would have connected a bit more with it if I had played the previous games. With that question answered, let us now go a bit more in depth into this game. First, let's talk about the story. The game is set in the fantasy world of Sanctuary, where angels and demons are a part of everyday life. A powerful demon called Lilith is summoned by members of a cult, and she arrives to seize power in Sanctuary by brainwashing its citizens. The protagonist, a custom character that you create, is unlucky enough to reach a village where Lilith has already brainwashed everyone, and your character is drugged and force-fed some blood puddles, which give you a connection to Lilith. If that's not weird enough already, the story only gets weirder from there. For those who are new to the franchise, I would suggest to just go with the flow and not be too worried about why certain characters are behaving in seemingly foolish ways. The goal of the story is simply to lead you to the next chapter, and it serves that purpose well enough. There are a total of 6 acts in the story, along with a prologue and an epilogue. There are a total of 96 main quests and more than 200 side quests, although you can only hold 20 side quests in your inventory at one time. The main quests see you chasing Lilith over 5 regions of Sanctuary, and just like Mario chasing Princess Peach and then realizing that the princess is in another castle, you end up reaching many places only to realize that Lilith just left. Lilith is clearly a very powerful and intriguing character, so it's a bit of a shame that you don't get to fight her directly until the very end. You keep up with Lilith's progress by tracking her blood petals, which she conveniently leaves at important places. Touching these petals gives you a vision of all the incidents that have happened at that place. Here's where the narration breaks the immersion a bit. The cutscenes in this game do not follow a standard format. I counted at least 3 different styles of cutscenes that each narrate important parts of the story. The most simple one among these are the in-engine cutscenes that retain the top-down approach of the standard gameplay. Then we sometimes get cutscenes where the camera zooms down to show the characters' faces and emotions clearly, like a standard third-person game would. And finally, we have pre-rendered cinematic cutscenes that are reserved for the key story moments. These are no doubt very impressive, but the rotation between these 3 styles of storytelling can be a bit jarring to say the least. You are accompanied on your journey by a small group of colleagues, each with their own backstory which I did not dare to go too deep into. But thanks to some really good voice performances, these side characters ended up feeling very important to the story, and by the end of the game I was invested in all of their own journeys.
My son, please come back to me. Come back. I shouldn't have let you go. I should have said no.
The main issue with the story is that it feels a bit too stretched. So much so that I was not surprised to see an option to skip the campaign in order to reach the end game faster. But since my objective was to play the game just for the campaign, I didn't use that option. Once you get over the slower parts of the story, the pace picks up towards the end and wraps up on a decent note. Even though gameplay and loot seem to be the main focus of this franchise, it was nice to see that Blizzard didn't spare any expense in making sure that the production quality of the story remained high. This is what Diablo is all about, or at least what I think fans like it for: the moment to moment gameplay. The satisfying feeling of being a powerful demon slayer. You don't really get the best gear in the game simply by playing the campaign, but even at level 30, I had enough skill points and legendary gear to have a decent build for my necromancer that made demolishing groups of demons a piece of cake. As a reminder, I was playing on tier 1, and while this lines up with my usual choice to select the lowest difficulty level, it turns out that the community also recommends that the campaign should be played on the easiest setting. The reason for this is that the campaign is seen as a roadblock to reaching the end game, and the goal is thus to finish it as soon as possible. Selecting tier 2 difficulty might give you XP faster, but it also slows down the game due to the higher difficulty of the enemies. At tier 1, I mostly had a very easy time, except in the final act where for some reason the difficulty suddenly spikes up for no reason. And I'm not talking of a gradual increase, but a surprising increase of more than 10 levels just to make the final boss more challenging. The funny thing is, the epilogue then drops down the difficulty to scale to my character level. The map of Sanctuary is quite big, with 5 regions, all of which are full of enemies to hunt. You are given a mount a bit late into the game, so for the first half you have to keep running from one place to the other, unlocking waypoints that you can then use to fast travel. Playing on the Xbox Series X, I found that the loading times were quite speedy. The game does have loading screens, but the wait times are quite low. Performance in general is also quite smooth, allowing you to focus on eliminating the demons without having to worry about frame rate dips or other issues. There are 5 classes to choose from, each offering a variety of melee or ranged abilities. If you end up playing the game in the long term, you are of course encouraged to try out all the classes. But what about for us campaign only folks? We only want to play the game once, so which class would be ideal? After asking around, I found that the community recommended the Necromancer for first timers, for the simple reason that even if you play solo, you get to play with a bunch of computer controlled bots. The Necromancer can raise skeletons and a golem from the corpses of your enemies, so you have a small army of minions running around with you. The best thing is that they don't disappear after a fight is over, they stick around until they die, and then you can simply bring them back to life. I also tried the Druid class a bit, but eventually switched to the Necromancer for the rest of my playthrough. All classes have a wide set of abilities, but only a handful of buttons to push at a time, so you have to choose which abilities you want to take into the battle. This allows for a good experimentation of builds, which contributes to the massive replayability of the game. So what do you do with all these builds and abilities? Well, the core gameplay loop is to go to a quest or a dungeon, explore the map until it is clear of all enemies, fight a named boss at the end, get some shiny loot, and then rinse and repeat. There are more than 100 dungeons spread all over the map, some of which are included in the campaign, but a lot of which are not. These dungeons offer useful items called aspects, which can further make your build more interesting, so they are worth a look. Dungeons form a huge part of the endgame leveling loop, so the campaign is a good place to check whether you actually like the core gameplay loop or not. The one huge negative about the gameplay is that it is online only. This makes sense if you are playing with friends, but for solo players with no offline mode, you are at the mercy of your internet connection and the stability of the game's servers. Also, there is no option to pause the game when you are playing solo, so you'll have to make sure that you are not interrupted in the real world so that you are not forced to go AFK at a bad time in the game. I know a lot of online only games don't have a pause option for solo players, but Suicide Squad recently proved that it is possible to have one. So naturally, I'll be looking for such an option in other games going forward. To sum up the gameplay experience, Diablo 4 is like comfort food. It doesn't offer anything new after the initial thrill of feeling powerful, but after a point, you keep playing just because you spent so much time building your character and now you just want to have mindless fun.
I should find better shelter before I freeze.
My initial reaction to the visuals was, why is everything so dark in this game? Then I discovered that Diablo 3 got a lot of criticism for making everything look too bright and cartoonish. So the developers went in the other extreme direction and made everything dark and gloomy. It sure offers a realistic representation of a place infested by demons from hell, but I would gladly give away a bit of realism in return for some more lights. You rarely get to see anyone's face given the top-down camera view, but in the few cutscenes that you actually see everyone, I could appreciate the artwork a bit more. As for the pre-rendered cinematic cutscenes, there's nothing to complain about the visuals there, as Blizzard has always been known for producing realistic and thrilling cutscenes. This is the part of the game that doesn't really affect those of us looking to just finish the campaign. You are reminded constantly that there are seasons in the game and the menu prominently has a store tab, but you can safely ignore both these elements of the game until you finish the campaign. At the time of recording this video, the game is currently going through its third season and I have no idea what happened in the first two seasons. Regarding monetization, I could see that there was a battle pass with one free tier and two paid tiers. The cash shop predictably had a lot of cosmetic items on sale, none of which actually impact your gameplay experience. At this point, there is little to be said about these items because publishers are not going to stop putting them in games anytime soon. So all I will say is just ignore the constant reminders to engage with the live service nature of the game and focus on running the campaign. Once you finish the campaign, you have a choice. Either stick to your original plan and uninstall the game, or question yourself whether you actually ended up liking the gameplay loop enough to stay around a bit longer. After all, the most powerful builds in the game are only obtainable in the end game. Honestly, I faced this dilemma myself and I was curious to spend a little more time with the game. But after 18 hours with the campaign, I took a break and spent some time making this video instead. I may go back to explore a few more dungeons and see if I can get to level 50, but I am in no hurry to do so. But at the same time, I haven't uninstalled the game either. So there you have it, the campaign-only overview of Diablo 4. This is certainly a great addition to the Game Pass catalog, and since it is an Xbox Studios game now, it will never leave. You can enjoy the base game for as long as you want. It has enough content to keep players happy for more than 100 hours without having to wait for an expansion to come along. But if you are eager for more, there is a paid expansion set to come out later in 2024.